So I've been able to get this off.
The video.
Okay, so I've already replaced this one.
So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do this vertical box plot over here on the top right corner. So these are just 4 examples of box plots. The 2 on the left, where I've done in another video, and they're based on using Excel box and whisker plot. This is Excel 2016 I'm using here. This vertical box plot, top right corner, now that's based on using a stacked column plot and XY scatter plots, combining them all together to produce this. The nice thing about this, it takes a little while to do and you got to do some calculations, but the nice thing is you got control over the length of your whiskers. Another way of saying that is you have control over what is an outlier. With the 2 on the left, it's whatever, you don't have any way to define the outlier. I believe the ones on the left, it's 1.5 times the IQR is the length of the whisker. And it may be just one outlier you can have. You can't have 2 or more. The one on the bottom right corner, the horizontal box plot, I showed it with bars, but you can also do that one with whiskers. That'll be another video, just to keep the videos from becoming long. This one, as you can see, is a little bit long, just to show the calculations necessary. And so I guess let's get to it. And over here to the left is the data. It's in the table form, and this is an Excel table, not just a generic name table, because you could call this data here a table, but it's just a generic table and has no special properties, where this table here is an Excel table and it has some special properties and functions, and they're really nice. And the name of this table, when you get that little arrow, you see how it is in the top left corner. And now up here in the name, it's table 18 or table 18. Excel named it that. The first one I had was table 1, and then as I was making changes to my spreadsheet, it ended up with a table 18 for the name of this one. So it's just something to pay attention to. And you can refer to the different variables or the different columns by the heading name. And if I were to change this name to, I'm going to go back to this one. I liked top left corner. Sorry for the distraction. I had sensor in there for the name. These are different tables. So this table here, just Excel called that table 2 when I created that one. This one, there must have been some before it, and then it ended up being table 18. I've added and deleted to the spreadsheet a number of times, but I'm going to change this one to sensor. Now, wherever that name was used, and the name was used, it was changed elsewhere in the program, in the sheet. This table is available anywhere in the spreadsheet, not just this page. That's why each Excel table in the spreadsheet has to have a unique name. So over to this table here, the generic table, where I've made all the calculations. These are just the different values I've calculated here. And we'll just start with the average. These are the M1s, are the sensor locations. I just called them measurement point 1, 2, and 3, just a rehash if you haven't watched my other videos. Now the average, you can see right off, it's got an if statement in it, and it's got curly Q braces. So what this is an array calculation. I think of it as Excel holds some information up in the air based on some, like if statement, in this case, checkings or calculations, or program steps in a sense, and then chooses certain values to use to calculate average in this case. Now, I'll go ahead and cover. If I click on this, you can see it's table 18. Before I changed over here in the heading over here, it had the word name in there instead of sensor. So that's the nice thing. Excel keeps track of that for you. So if you do make some changes, because it could make more sense having sensor in there instead of name in there, it'll keep track of that. Doesn't do it to all of them, only that table, and only the equations that are referring to that table. Okay, so what Excel is doing is it's looking table 18, sensor column, so it's taking all the values in that column, and it says, is it equal to F $4? So it's looking up here in the red box, right, which is M1. So it's seeing, are the sensor names equal to M1? And if they are, then use that, if they are true, if they are equal to each other, then take the value, named value, and use that in the average calculation. Now when I hit enter, the curly Q braces went away up above here, before this value here. Now the value didn't change for some reason. A lot of times it will change. The way to get the curly Q braces is Control Shift Enter. And that makes it an array formula. And you can see that after I hit enter, the green box that indicates what's the active cell or the ready cell, the selected cell, just doesn't go anywhere. It stays there. So that's how you get the average calculation. The minimum calculation is the same thing. Same equation inside there. Are the values equal? Does M1 equal to in the sensor name? Then hold all those values and calculate the minimum. Give me the maximum. Now the reason I put the $4 is so I could copy to the right just by dragging this over. So now you see over here, this is going up here. It's looking at G4. This is looking at H4. So it's looking at M3. So it's not equal, so it ignores the values that are M1, ignores the values for M2, and it uses all the values that are down here at M3. Let me zoom in up to 100%. Makes it slightly easier to read. Doesn't cover as much as the table, but I think that'll be okay. Okay, so minimum's the same. It's just you're using the minimum function. Maximum is the same, just using the max function. The same arguments inside the parentheses for the max function. Now, if you do accidentally click somewhere and you get it activated, another way to get out of this mode, see we're in the edit mode. If you look here at the bottom left corner, you can see in Excel whether you're in the ready mode or the edit mode, and now we're in the edit mode. If you hit the escape key, top left corner of your keyboard, that'll get you out of there also. But once you get into this mode and you click somewhere else, the curly Q's went away. And we have a different value here. It was 11 for the max. Now it's 13 for some reason. So I go back in there, get back into the edit mode, which I just judge by the color of the letters and numbers up there, and Control Shift Enter, and now we got our max value, which is 11 now. It makes much more sense. See, 13 is over here is the max from M3. It's not the maximum for M1. So if we scroll over here, highlight all the ones that are M1, you can see it doesn't show the max, but we can look at it and see the max is 11 there. Nice thing about tables is I can sort all I want, smallest to largest, and it allows me to rearrange things so I can see stuff. So if I wanted to see, hey, what is the maximum value for everything? Let's go largest to smallest. Oh, 13 is largest, and that should be for M3. Okay, that's good. M1's largest is 11, and M2's largest is 8.59, or 8.6 in this table here. So back over to table 18. I want to get them back into the proper sequence. Sort smallest to largest on the day. That gives 3 1s, 3 2s, da-da-da. And now I sort by the sensor column, and now that makes them all M1s and these are sorted in order. So it's just kind of, you do it in order. Okay, so we've calculated average, min, and max. Q1 is a quartile, so that's the first quartile. We need to calculate that. We use the same argument inside this argument here, same if argument inside there. So we got if this, then give me the value, and then we have to use and that gives us all the range of values basically that Excel holds up in the air, and we want the first quartile. That's why there's a 1 in there. I'm going to hit escape. I come out of that mode. The median, I'm using the median, and the second quartile are the same thing. I could have used the quartile function with a 2, but I chose to use the median instead. That's the equation for that. Third quartile. Equation is the same as the first equation, except it's got a 3 there. So it's a comma 3 on the end. And then the IQR is just Q3 minus Q1, which is what F10 minus F8 is. And now we want to build our stacked columns. So we got to calculate the boxes. How are we going to stack boxes on top of each other? It's not as simple as putting in Q1, stacking Q2 on that, because that's not how it would work. So the first box is just equal to Q1. That's just a box. Now we got to stack another box on top of it so that we end up at the same level as Q2. So that's going to be Q, the median, or Q2, minus Q1. And that's what this box is here. Now I've got a little if-then statement in there because at one point I had problems with things going to 0. And so that's what this is. If F9 minus F8 is equal to 0, then put in a small number. Otherwise, just give me F9 minus F8. Q3 box is going to be F10 minus F9. F10 minus F9. So it's just the difference. Then we want to get into our outlier calculation. Our outlier calculation is going to be and this is the minimum outlier, sorry. So the minimum outlier, so we're going in the negative direction. Let me bring one of these plots over here so I can point to something. Since this is the plot we're going to be trying to build here, let me bring this over here. Now, what we want to do is we want to know what this value is here. We're going in the negative direction. So it calculates, and it's going to be Q1. So Q1 is the bottom of the IQR box minus 1.5 times the IQR. So the IQR is the blue box, the inner quartile range. And so Q1 minus 1.5 times IQR is minus 3.1 in this case. The maximum outlier, come over here, so that's what that equation is saying. Anytime, pause this so you can look at it and double check things. Now this is going to be F10, so we're going in the positive direction. So we want to take Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. So we go 1.5, Q3 is F10, plus 1.5 times the IQR. Once again, hit escape to get out of the edit mode when you're in the whiskers, the array plot. So that gives us those raw numbers. Now we want to calculate how long to draw the whiskers. What's this difference, in this case, from the top of, from Q3 up to the end of that whisker? So that's going to be, and this is also doing a check. It wants to look at the maximum. So the whisker is either going to be to the maximum value, or the whisker, if our values are outside of our limit for the max outlier. I'm going in the positive direction first here. Sometimes it's easier to think that way. So I am checking, and none of these are array formulas, you've noticed, these last few ones here. We're checking to see if our maximum value, 11, is greater than F16, our maximum outlier value. So 11, is 11 greater than 9.8? The answer is yes. Since it is, then we want to make our whisker 1.5 times our IQR. So that's the 1.5 times F11, which is our IQR. Otherwise, like in the case for this one, our whisker is only going to go to the max value. There is no outlier. So we're not going to plot we want to see our data. We don't want to see something that's not there. So if it isn't, if our max value is not greater than our calculated outlier limit, then we're just going to take our maximum minus Q3. So that's what this F7 minus F10 is. It's our maximum value minus, but we're not using that in this case here. So let me escape out of that. Here, on this one we are. This one we do our calculation and we say, is G7 our maximum? Is that greater than this value here? And the answer is no. So then we use G7 minus G10. Our maximum value, our G7 is up here at 8.6 minus G10, which is 6.3. So that gives us a value of 2.3. The minus direction is the same type of logic. In the negative direction, is our minimum less than, so in this case it's less than, because we're going in the negative direction, is our minimum less than our calculated minimum outlier limit? And the answer is no. So since it is not, then it uses F8, our Q1 minus our minimum. So that tells us how far to draw this line. The whisker calculations, so these equations here, from about here to here, are not array formulas. All these equations are array formulas, okay? And all our outliers are array formulas. Now the reason I have a bunch of minus 10s here is because the formula looks at some information and it comes up with an error. So when I get an error, because it doesn't find a minimum value. So we're going for the minimum outlier. We're looking at all the values we have, and if we don't have a minimum outlier, by the way I've written this code, we get an error. And so when I get an error, instead of having things go crazy, I want to put a number in there, and I picked minus 10. So that essentially I am parking. Let me just double click on that. See, I set our minimum for the bounds on our axis. I set that to 0 over here. Let's escape from that. Huh. Where am I? Just by hitting the control key. So I want to reset this to minus 10. Now you can see all those X's. And there's basically a bunch of these red X's parked on top of each other. I parked it somewhere and I just set it out of the way. So based on your data, you may want to use different values. So this equation says if, let's see if we can talk our way through this. If the sensor value, if sensor, if the names match, right? So it's that same type of logic. So this is finding the names here. That's what these values are doing here. Do the names match M1? And then it's multiplying that Boolean value. So that's a Boolean value. It's either yes, it's either 0 or 1. Multiplying that times, is the value also less than F15? F15 is this minus 3.1. So it's looking for all the values that are M1, all the sensor locations that are M1, and taking those values, and in those values it's saying are values less than this minus 3.1. And if none, in this case, none of them match, right? Because none of the values are less than 3.1. But if they are, it's going to take the smallest one. Because this has got, and then if they do, I got to get this right here. If those equations do come out true, then it's going to take those values. And it's going to take the smallest one. Because I got small, comma, and then this comma 1 here. Over here at the end, takes the smallest one of all the values you show. 2 takes the second smallest, 3 takes the third smallest, so on and so forth. So this equation is showing an error because it looks for values, it looks for the smallest value. There's no values in this case for it to look at. So it returns an error. That's why I have the if error statement. So when it does return an error, I put the value minus 10 in that equation. This is an array formula, remember, Control-Shift-Enter. So the second outlier, same equation, except it's a 2. Third outlier, same equation, it's a 3. The max outlier, now this one is going to come up with it's going to come up with some values. The max outlier looks at the same equation, same if statement. So it gathers up some data, all the values that are M1s it's looking for. It grabs all those numbers. That's what this is telling us. So all the ones, it's an end state. That's another way of writing the end statement, by multiplying them together like this. Grabs all the, if these two things are true, and they're true, great. Hold all those values, and then if they're true, then give me the value, and tell me what the largest one is. And the largest one is, I'm going to hit escape to get out of this edit mode. The largest value is 11. Over down here, I'm looking for the second largest value, and that gives me a 2. And then the third largest value. In this case, it doesn't find any, because I know that because it gave me a minus 10. Okay. Now, the reason, I put the dollar signs is now I can copy to the right. And what I could do back here, the reason I put $4 there, is I could copy down one, I could copy these down, right? And all I had to do was change this here to min. Change this one to max, right? And I got the equations coming through, but I lost my curly cues. I didn't lose it there. Lost my curly cue here, so that's Control-Shift-Enter. I have to be in edit mode. To be in edit mode, the letters and names and all that are colored. And it's interesting that the value, this value will change because the 13 is actually this M3. So it doesn't do it right when it's not in array mode. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, but it's only because of happenstance. But that's why I went to $4. That way, if I copied stuff down, I didn't have to copy that whole equation. And you also could just go like this. Yeah, you're good there. And do Control C. I was just making sure the parentheses lined up. And do it, when you type your formula, you can use X, max, and then do Control V, and you're there. And remember, it's an array formula, Shift Control Shift, Enter. But we don't need it down there. I'm just showing you stuff, trying to show you stuff out to make it easy. Okay, so now we've got this whole plot figured out. I'm going to move that. I'm going to go park this back over there. Just leave it there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to copy this data. These are the average min, no, I'm sorry. We want to copy the boxes. These are the boxes we're going to copy. So the gray is supposed to show you the values we're going to use in the plot. The, whatever you call that, it's not a peachy, cream color. That cream color, we're not going to actually use in the plot. We needed it to make our calculations, but we're not using it. So to do this, go to Insert, and then we want to click on this little button here. Get rid of that box. That's because I'm pushing the Control key to get that little circle to show up. And just hit Escape to get rid of that box. But now it's giving us guesses, and this is actually the guess I think is right. One of the guesses look right, but I want to choose it to be positive. We want to go to a column plot. So I chose all charts up here, not the recommended charts. It always brings you to recommended charts. Choose all charts in this case, and we want a stacked column. Click on that. There's two choices. I like the one on the left. I'm not sure what the one on the right's doing. Click OK. Move it a little bit out of the way, but close by. Okay. So we're going to want to change the color of these first off. We don't care about the series names. They don't actually align with them 1, 2, and 3 up top. So we want to change the color of the boxes. The first thing we want to do, though, is get rid of the color. And if there is an outline to these boxes, we want to get rid of the outline. So left click, so they're all three, got the little highlight indicators to them. Right click, and on fill, we want to choose no fill. And then if we click out, we can see that the boxes have disappeared. So now that's starting to look like our inner quartile range, except the colors aren't the same. They should be the same color. So we're going to change the fill to this blue here. It's kind of a nice, flat, easy blue. And we're going to change the fill of the top box. But you see how it kind of disappears? We need to outline. We need to get colors to the outline of each of the boxes. I'm going to choose, I like this this gray color here. You could use a blue color. Let's try this gray color. We'll choose the same gray color. For some reason, it won't give it to me when I just click on that. That's okay. Maybe that's a little soft. We're going to leave it like that, though, for now. And that indicates the mean. So that's why you want that there. And that's why I think I want that a little darker. All of this is personal preference. So I'm just playing with it and not wasting your time, hopefully. That looks a little better, I think. So you can see the mean. It isn't hidden. We're going to go to select data. Now what we want to do is we want to change these names along the bottom. Instead of 1, 2, 3, we want to have it say M1, M2, M3. So for the stacked column, you use this edit button here. We want to click the axis label range it's asking for. And so we want to use those three there. It's got M1, M2, M3 in there. And now we can see here that it's got M1, M2, M3 even before we click OK. So now this is starting to look like a plot. We don't need this legend in here, but we're going to leave it in here just to see stuff. It's showing you the series, so really the series are running laterally. They're not running vertically on this. That's why this series 1 has no color to it, because we got rid of the color to these boxes here. Okay. So now we'd like to stick what on there? Let's stick we got the average. We formatted the boxes. Let's go with the average. I forgot all about my checklist over here. Sorry about that. But it gives you a kind of a direction of where we're going. And I forgot to mention in the beginning, anytime you do something with your data, look at it first before you start jumping into it. That's why the table's kind of nice, because you could have sorted things and looked at values being too big and too small. Maybe you had some crazy, absurd value mistyped. Things like that you can find real quick. It's worth doing. But we've done all the different calculations. We built the stack column. We formatted the boxes. Now let's add the average. Build it from the inside out. So to do that, we want to select data. The interesting thing about this right-click menu, so that's what I'm doing, is I'm right-clicking here. Depending on where you are, you get a different type of menu. But you're always looking for select data. It's always the same, select data. And you end up here. We don't want to mess with any of these series. What we want to do is add some data. So the series name, we might as well get it because it'll help us keep it straight later on. We choose average. Click on the little up arrow, and that helps prevent any weirdness in our data. And I'll show you what I mean here in a little bit. So that came through, everything came in clean. We click OK, even though we look in the background and something doesn't look right. And I'm going to click OK out of that. So what it did is it just added, because this is a stacked column plot, it added it on top. And it thinks that's what we want to do. It's not what we want it to do. So we're going to right-click, change series chart type. And what we want to do, let me make this box you can expand out. The average, we don't want to have as a stacked column. The average, we want to not even be a line plot. We want to use an XY scatter plot. And we want to use the straight line one. And I'll show you then the straight line, because it wouldn't be right to have a curved plot with the lines connecting them. Some people like and we're going to click OK because it's starting to look right. So it put them in there where we wanted them. So we can use a line with markers plot. So we can use an XY scatter plot or the line with markers plot. It puts them in the same place, in the same, I don't want to say column, but if we think of each one of these vertically, it's aligned. Now it's a matter of formatting this so we like its shape. So if we click on this, so now we want to format this. What I would just do is just double click, get the line highlighted, double click on it, and it brings over different options. So what we have, series options, is a nice, it's selected just one point. I don't want just one point, I want the series average. So now it's got all three of the points circled or highlighted with those four dots in the center. It says it's on the primary axis, which is good. That's what you want. But we want to change the marker and the line. Let's do this without a line for right now. We can always add it later. The marker, we want to choose the marker. Do we want an X or a circle? We'll go with the circle. The color, let's go with no color. Oh, the border. Let's go with the fill first. Let's go with no fill. Let's go on the border, automatic color. Let's choose that darker gray color. Now let's click someplace out of the plot, and that looks kind of nice. I like using the circles for the averages and the red X's for the outliers. I'm not sure, everybody does things a little different. Every little field or industry has their own little normal ways of doing stuff. I kind of like the circles. If you wanted to use the X's, you could easily just one click, right? So you get make sure all three are highlighted, or whatever number you have. Click on the paint bucket, click on the marker, and if you want to use a different type of marker, you could go with the built-in, and then choose the X here, and then you get your X. But we're going to stick with the automatic, which is the circle, and it filled it in. I want no fill, and the border, I want this dark color. So there, we got our averages in there, and I just click there, and our bottom boxes are still there. They're just invisible. So now what we want to do, let me get rid of that. We put the average in there, so now we want to put the whiskers in there. So for the whiskers, you want to click on the invisible box to put the whiskers that go down. I'll show you why. Now, we want to add error bars. So our whiskers are going to be error bars. And see, it automatically populates it in there with its Excel's guess of what you want to do. And this little right arrow shows different standard error percentage or standard deviation. We're not using any of those because we made our own calculation. So we click on more options. It opens this box. Now, which direction are we going? We are going in the minus direction only. So it's putting the error bars on top of the box. So that's the reason we chose the invisible boxes instead of this box here. Puts the error bars automatically on the top of the box. It has these regular equations or options, and we have our custom because we want to specify a value. And it says, where's the value? The positive error value, we don't care to put a number in there. Don't bother deleting it out because Excel wants something in there. Leave it the way it is. So we're going with our whisker in the minus direction. That's these three values here. Let me just highlight those again in case you didn't. They're not really showing up, but it's these three values here. Click that back at that arrow. Click OK. And that's when you want to double check are the outliers coming down about as far as you want it. Did it come down to the minimum values? 0.1. I'm looking at these values up here. Did this come down to 0.1? I'll stop doing that. This one comes down to 2. This one comes down to 0.1. So those are correct. So now to do the maximum outlier bars, we want to click on the top box. We want to once again click on the plus sign. We want to show error bars. It sticks them on the top of the box. So we can't choose which the top or the bottom of the box. It only sticks them on the top of the box. We want more options. Brings that up here in the format error bars. We want to choose custom because we made our calculations. Before I click on specify value, I want to go in the plus direction only. I want the cap because I like this look. Specify value. Which value you're going to use for the positive error value. I'm going to go to whisker plus because that's the distance I want to travel. Click OK. Now I'm at about a 9.8. Over here, I'm looking at these values here. Now, these aren't the values I chose. These are the values I selected because that's the distance I want to draw the line. But what are the values on the absolute scale of my plot? 9.8. It's not 10.1 because this is the max value. So it should go 9.8, 8.6, and 10.5. Okay, so that's correct. Does that make sense? Let me say it again. The first one should be the whisker. So this is something you have to kind of know when you're doing the double checking. This made the calculation for us. So at the end of when you do it this way, when you're all done, make sure everything makes sense. Or as you're going along, make sure everything makes sense. Make sure you've highlighted the proper values. Okay, now we want to add the outliers. And what we have here is we got a bunch that we don't have to add, but I'm going to add them anyways, just to be thorough. And it's good practice. And then it would allow me to more easily use this plot coming in the future. All I would have to do is put new values in the table. And these tables are easy to expand because all you have to do is grab this little drop-down box and all these it's looking for all these values. Control Z is going to get rid of that little change I made with that little drop-down box. And you might be able to just copy-paste and the Excel would know you want to expand it bigger. If it's smaller, you might have to pay attention to it. So let's go through this, starting here with the first min outlier so we don't get confused. You're going to have to go to select data again. We want to add data. The series name we grab. And then we want to grab slide all across highlight the 3 data points and click OK. Now what we're going to do is we're going to click out. So what we want to do here is reformat these, and I'm hoping if we reformat these, the next ones we put in will, something I've never tried before, will have the same general shape. We will find out and learn together. So we got built, we choose the X, so that's the mark, we don't care about the fill. The border is the color we care about. That's the X. The fill, if we filled it in, it would make it a square. So that's what it looks like. So that we're done with those. They're buried. We're going to eventually reformat this axis so it goes from 0 to whatever automatic value it wants. Now we want to do this. Now we want to add the other ones in. Select data. Add. Get the name. We're on the second one. The values, click on that. That helps keep track so things don't get a little goofed up. We selected those 3 values. And OK. It looks like it went with circles. We will find out later. Series name, third. Value. Select those 3 values, and I'm just doing it the click method. Add, so we're getting the first max outlier. What you could do is click tab here. It jumps down, highlights that for you, so you could just go ahead and scroll across. And then you could hit enter or return, and you're done. Whatever you prefer, series name. Whoops, that's the series name. Arrow. Come across, grab on all three, click OK. Back to the click method. Sometimes it's a little more methodical, easier to keep track of. Just depends if you're a keyboard shortcut person or a point and click person. Then we click OK. So we can see it put circles in there. It didn't follow with X's like I was hoping. So we got to go through each one. Click on the marker. We don't want any lines in between them. We want to click on markers. We want to go to marker option. We want the built-in. You have to click on that first and then drop down arrow, click the X. We're not going to change the fill of these. It's the border. It's the border color. Now we're done with that one. What we can do is a series option up here. And we can just start from the top and work our way down. See what they all look like. That one's correct. That was the first one we did. Second series. So this is maybe a little easier to keep track of. It allows us to go through in order. And I'm just doing the border colors. I should be talking more instead of doing more. So I got that one done. Series options. Third minimum outlier. Click built-in option, the drop-down arrow, the X. I want to change the border color, not the fill color, because automatically it has no fill color. And then you click the red. Come back up. We've done, I believe we did the first max outlier. Yep, those are already done. Those are the ones I did visual. Second max outlier, that's the one just below it. Right, it built in. We want to choose the X, choose the color for the border color, solid line, and now the last one, third max outlier, built in, the X, the red of the border. So we are done. If you wanted lines from average to average, that's kind of a nice thing to see sometimes. Just click on the little circle for the average and put solid line between it. If you didn't want, and you can choose a color, choose maybe the gray color we're using elsewhere, and you can make it thinner. So it makes it less of a jump on your eyes. This legend here, jump on your eyes. I'm not sure what that means, but a punch to your eyes. We don't really need it. It just kind of shows things. And I could have used that. I didn't think of that till right now as a way to keep track of how many more outliers I needed to change the markers. Because these little X's would have changed from circles to the red X's. The way to get rid of that, there's two ways. One, you can just delete it right now. Just highlight it so that box shows up. Click in there. That box would, if you hit delete, it would go away. Also, you hit this little chart elements plus mark, come down here, and just unclick legend, and it goes away. We got the M1, the M2, and the M3 still here. What we can do, so this looks right. This chart elements box only goes away. Oh, it's driving me nuts. Hit an escape. That's sorry. And so if I click on the axis labels, instead of the minimum being set to auto, just type a value in there and hit return. And then it changes that to reset if you want to reset it to auto, but otherwise it's in manual at this point. If you wanted to make it so there's no decimal points there, come down to number and just put a 0 in there for decimal places. And hit enter and see what you think of it. let's see if we got everything off the checklist. We remove the legend, and now it's just a matter of the title. So the title, let's see if this, so now you can see I just click up there in the formula box, and you can say box plot, and so now it's changing up here, but you don't see it change down in chart title. That's the way chart title. That's the way it's supposed to work. Once you hit return out of the formula bar, then it appears down there. But also you can, if you've done plots before, I assume you have, once you plot inside this box and get the little flashing line to appear, then anytime you hit return, it changes it inside the box. Your preference, however you want to work. So this is a vertical box plot. It's one of the nice things about this plot is you can change your outlier limit. If you wanted to go with 2 times the IQR, you could. If we wanted to do that right now, all you'd have to do is change these equations, put a 2 in there, that's the minimum. If we change this, sure. Excuse me. Let's change that one. Let's change this one just to mess with it a little bit and see what it does to our plot over here. So it got rid of all the outliers because we used a different type of formula for our outlier limit. I'm just going to do Control Z to undo and bring it back. I've heard of 1.5 times the IQR. I've heard of 2.0 times the IQR. I've heard of other more sophisticated statistical methods. So this is what's nice about building your own box plot out of the stacked column plots and the XY scatter plots and putting them all together. Let's do one little change chart type. Let's look at what we have here. So we got all these different types of plots in here. We got stacked columns, we got line markers. They're all using the primary axis. And I guess that's, it just shows how you can mix and match Excel, build your own stuff. Hope this has helped you. And you can use it. And I'll eventually post another plot showing horizontal box plots. Thank you. Have a good day.